And welcome to the only nightly show in Detroit covering everything people, power, and politics. I'm Roop Raj. Thanks for making us a part of your night. We're going to be diving into a lot of last night's interview with Elon Musk on his social media platform X. He interviewed Donald Trump. But one thing that came out of that interview has a huge local impact. You hear about this? The United Auto Workers Union filing complaints with the federal government against Trump and Musk. We'll dive into the comments that prompted that. Plus, a pollster is telling VP Harris, hey, pump the brakes when it comes to electric vehicles, warning that she could lose voters because of it. A lot of topics involving cars, fitting for a show right here in the Motor City. But we begin tonight with the whole new world we're living in. You know how VP Harris has been criticized by her Republican rivals about not giving an extended interview, facing the tough questions? Well, that's not exactly a new thing. And it's all about one thing, controlling the message. We'll dive into the latest example of that here in a second. But as always, this show is about you. So we hit the streets to find out how accurate you think the information you get about campaigns and politics from social media actually is, and where you get your political information from. The news, which we hope is your answer, or is it social media? Here now, a pulse check.
No, I do not.
Is there any specific reason why?
I believe that they like us to see the things that they want us to see, but not the actual truth.
I'd say no.
So where do you get your election information from? Where do you prefer it?
I'm from Canada, so I try to watch more Canadian news to get a non-biased opinion.
Not at all. I tell my kids and everyone, stop looking at social media to be your answer to everything that you need. You need to be resourceful. You need to look up the information.
Social media, no, I don't trust it at all.
And so would you prefer to watch the news, or do you?
Yeah, that's probably the better option.
Even going to the local news and looking for your information, but definitely not social media.
We also asked you on fox2detroit.com, do you trust political news on social media? You can vote right now by scanning the QR code right there at the bottom right of your screen, right there. The vast majority say nope. At last check, the number of people who say they do is only in the single digits. So here's what prompted this topic for us here at The Pulse. Former President Trump sat down with Tesla CEO and ex-owner Elon Musk for an interview that got off to a rocky start, all because of glitches. It was supposed to start at 8 o'clock, but didn't start until closer to 8:45. Musk says it was because the Spaces part of the site was purposely flooded to knock it offline. Outage tracker down detector. Well, it couldn't find that that was the truth. It didn't confirm that. And the rest of the site seemed to be working pretty well, pretty normally. This isn't the first time a high-profile Musk interview had issues. You may remember this happened with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis when he announced his plans to run for president. He said, you know what, I'm going to roll it out on social media. And they had kind of a similar thing happen back then. Well, back to last night, though. Trump and Musk touched on a variety of issues, a lot of topics, including a favorite by Trump, the border, attacking Harris's record on the subject. Take a listen.
I saw an ad by Kamala saying how she is going to provide border security. Where has she been for 3.5 years? Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. She's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now.
All right, so here's the deal. We fact check Biden, Trump, Harris, anyone who's running for office. Harris was never named border czar by the Biden administration, even as some news organizations, including the BBC, called her that. But VP Harris has come under a lot of heat, a lot of fire because of how the border issue is handled from the White House. Her official task, though, was finding the root cause of the crisis. But enforcement has always been in the hands of the Department of Homeland Security. But Trump also brought up one with a Metro Detroit impact, one that landed him and Musk in hot water with a major union. He appeared to say striking workers could be fired.
I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone.
Now, here's the issue. That would be illegal. Federal law states a company cannot fire its employees if they're on strike. And the UAW filed unfair labor practices charges with the National Labor Relations Board against both Trump and Musk, accusing them of pushing for striking workers to be fired. Musk is an outspoken critic of unions, saying they create inequality among employees, and Tesla has been sued for putting policies in place that prevent workers from forming a union. UAW President Shawn Fain blasting Trump, calling him a scab, and adding this: Donald Trump will always side against workers standing up for themselves, and he will always side with billionaires like Elon Musk, who's contributing $45 million a month to a super PAC to get him elected. It went on to say this: both Trump and Musk want working class people to sit down and shut up, and they laugh about it openly. It's disgusting, illegal, and totally predictable from these two clowns. But here's why you see candidates being interviewed in settings like that on formerly Twitter, X, or friendly cable news channels. It's why President Biden is criticized for not holding news conferences hardly at all in that famous blue White House press briefing room. Trump sits down with Musk, a fierce supporter. Biden only sits down with friendly networks. And yes, so far no interviews at all for VP Kamala Harris, who wants your vote. Why? It's all about controlling the message. By not sitting down with journalists who are going to ask them tough questions, they avoid talking about things that, well, they don't want to talk about, or maybe they don't have an answer for. It's a trend we're seeing a lot more of, with candidates taking to social media instead to get their message out directly without ever having to answer a question. With that in mind, I should mention Fox 2 has requests in with the Harris camp and another request in with Trump's VP candidate, J.D. Vance. As you may know, I interviewed former President Donald Trump back in April. That interview was about 20 minutes long. Credit to him and to J.D. Vance for doing the interviews. We got to make sure that everybody has access to these candidates. We invite all of them to talk to us here. But speaking as a journalist, getting the real answers helps you at home be better informed when you head to the ballot box. And that's something we should all push for, whether you vote left or vote right. Now, speaking of cars, you know the big push the Biden administration is making to get everyone into an electric vehicle? Well, a pollster here in Michigan says Harris should pump the brakes. He's saying, quite frankly, not everybody wants them. And if they don't dial it back, it could cost Democrats a lot of votes. Former Michigan Governor and U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm says more charging stations are needed, and the prices for these cars, they need to come down. Michigan's top election officials, the target of a trend that's become all too common. You hear about this? Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says her house was swatted twice in 48 hours. Benson says despite the incidents, quote, she will not be intimidated. Now, we've talked about swatting before, but in case you need a reminder of what it is, it's where someone calls 911 and reports a fake crime at someone else's home, which then prompts a massive police response. Now, this is dangerous on a number of levels. It wastes resources and can really hinder police from responding to real emergencies that could be happening down the road. And there have been cases where police shoot an innocent person because of a fake call. Benson isn't the first to have this happen. Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin and former Congressman Mike Rogers both have had their homes swatted this week. The two, of course, are running against each other for a Senate seat. We're diving even deeper into social media and its role in our political cycles. Next on The Pulse, a guy who studies trends for a living in the hot seat to talk about where we are and where we're headed. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics, and we're taking a deep dive into social media and the increasing role it plays in our election process. We all have these in our hands all the time, and we're checking it pretty often. John Patterson, co-owner of That Random Agency, is in the hot seat tonight. Thanks for being here. If there's something to be said for creative names, that's a great name for a company, by the way. Very cool.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, by the way.
It's great to have you here. You've been on our air before talking about social media. I want to ask you about the role. We saw yesterday Elon Musk and Donald Trump together talking on social media. This is a tool, as much as we kind of said, hey, they need to do traditional media interviews, this cannot be ignored. This is a force to be reckoned with, social media.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I think we've seen this over the past 3 or 4 elections take a bigger and bigger role, right? I mean, as younger generations become of voting age, right, this is the way that they consume most of their media, right? I mean, you know, a younger demographic is more native to the online world. and they're really looking for that like condensing of information that social media is really good at, but also creates some risk, obviously, right? I mean, anytime you're boiling down huge political platforms, there's huge risk for misinformation or disinformation.
I got to say something just as a journalist who spent the last nearly 3 decades doing this job. We don't just randomly hear someone say something and then put it on TV. We verify, we check, we know how to write copy, we know how to write it in a way that's journalistically correct, that's fair, and whether it be covering the bankruptcy or covering a storm, we're not just viewers who are just running around with our phones. Right. The insulting part, I think, to journalism is that some people think, because I wrote something, I'm a journalist. So everyone gets to be a journalist because they have a phone. That's not true, and that actually is pretty dangerous, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, we saw in even the most recent set of elections and our midterm elections, huge amounts of misinformation, disinformation that we don't necessarily always have a grasp on where that comes from or how it comes to be. I mean, I think that really fact checking and relying on reliable sources is key for us, for us as citizens, as voters, to really understand, well, what is the platform, right? And what am I voting for? Because it's easy to get that confused.
And 140 characters may not be enough to explain an entire issue, and so it does take all of us together. But I do want to get into the mix here. We say we put people over pundits. One of our regulars on the Pulse, Sherry Gay Dignago, has this to say about social media and what it means to all of us. Take a listen.
Ruth, it's always great to join you as usual. I just have to say that social media has a way of connecting us with rapid fire like no other medium can. I get it. We have to verify information, but throughout this campaign, it is helping to galvanize and engage people in a way where information is spreading. And I think it's really a result. We're seeing the result of that with these increased numbers, polling numbers, for our new presidential candidate, Kamala Harris.
That's so interesting. Sherry's an unapologetic supporter of Kamala Harris and saying because of social media, we're seeing numbers rise. So that can't be ignored either. This is a really great place for candidates to land.
Yeah, and I think, like as you talked about in your intro, I think you're seeing the campaigns approach this in a very different way, right? I mean, I think you're seeing former President Trump take this head on, right? He's participating in interviews. He loves a good soundbite. We know that. Vice President Kamala Harris is taking a very different approach, right? Where she's controlling her narrative in a different way and looking to see social media through a very powerful network, a very large network, in a different way.
This is so interesting, and I do want to ask you about how traditional and social media can work together. Oftentimes you see interviews that air on this television station or any TV station or network, and those become the hits on social media. So as traditional media journalists, we need to understand the power of social media and figure out how to curate it so that it does get on social, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so, and many people watching this content will watch it in 15 or 30-second clips, not necessarily on your air and live, right? And I think that as journalists, you're seeing a shift towards planning for that, right? Setting up segments in that way, setting up guests potentially for that particular reason so that you're, simulcasting or cascading that content across different channels so that it's easy for a large variety of diverse audiences to consume.
Last question I have for you is about verifying information. Is it so crowded now on social media that it's virtually impossible to check? And is there a place for people to check for information if they're not watching traditional media?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you can always go to any reputable, news site's website and find things that will be researched, verified, and vetted. You can also use some of the social media built-in tools. So I know now, for example, AI and deepfakes is a huge topic, right. And it's going to get larger. And now platforms like Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and Google are actually identifying and labeling those using technology that they're working with the AI companies on to make sure that you understand, did Vice President Harris actually say this? Did former President Trump actually say these words? Because it can be very convincing, even in video, to, the things that may be not true.
What's your biggest piece of advice you have for candidates that are looking at this right now as a potential tool?
I would say, be authentic, right? Actually familiarize yourself with the tools and the platforms and the audiences that want to engage with you there. It's really easy to come across as inauthentic or to, take a tactic that's tried and true that maybe you use somewhere else and try to apply it, and maybe it doesn't fit, right?
And I'll tell you, whether you're Donald Trump or you're Kamala Harris, staging something, people, whether you have a PhD or a GED, they know when you're fooling them, and they can tell when it's staged, right?
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, really.
It's so good to see you, Jonathan. Come back on the Pulse again and talk to us again. And if you're watching this, perhaps you're watching this on a 15-second clip that's been curated for social media, but we thank you for your time today. And you know, you mentioned it, Jonathan, we're sticking with the technology angle, but a darker side of it, AI, artificial intelligence, deep fakes, misinformation warfare, how you can figure out what's real and what's not. You're watching The Pulse. Did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Back now, looking at politics, looking at people, and looking at everything that's going on from the Motor City to the Beltway. And we're working for you to make sure you know how to spot what's real and what's fake as deep fakes and AI take over. You've seen it on your phone. David Derajotis, the cyber risk expert with Flow Specialty, is in the hot seat now. And David, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Roop.
All right, so let's talk about this. First of all, the last time that we saw a claim that something was fake or real was about crowd size. Former President Trump basically saying that perhaps the size wasn't as big for Kamala Harris at her Detroit rally, and then there was pictures all over. Talk about what we saw, what was real and what wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue right now. There's so much information being flooded towards us. How do you know? How are you able to parse through what is real, what's not? We saw videos of things and pictures of things that were not real that were being purported to be real. We also saw videos of actual things that were legitimate and told were not legitimate. That's the problem. That's the issue that we're all facing now, and it's only getting worse.
Well, we were talking to Jonathan before you, and I said, how do people know? And I love what he said, because that is what we always say. You know, go to fox2detroit.com, look for the image. It's a Fox 2 photographer who lives in your community who shot this video. What harm is being done to social media right now with all these deep fakes and this, and really, frankly, using Trump's words with all this fake news on social media?
Roop, look what the poll results showed at the top of the show. 90% do not trust social media. That's exactly where we are right now because of all of this. It's so easy to create something out of thin air. I can create an image of you, having you state whatever I want you to say. I can put you in any location that I want you to be in. It's so important to be able to corroborate that with other photos, with other evidence. You have to take a step back, you have to pause, and you have to find other sources that can show that it is true and legitimate.
But what happens when you have most people on the other side of the camera who are very smart, and they know the difference between fake and real, and they kind of question things, and they go, is that real? But what about the people who just like pass it on and then share it? And those moments sometimes go viral. That's a problem.
That's the problem. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube when, with a lot of these viral videos and photos that we end up seeing. I mean, look at Facebook, for example, 190 million users in the U.S. TikTok, 150 million. X is on the smaller side, and that's at 100 million.
Wow.
How are you able to go back and correct? If you see a video or an image that's gone viral, millions of people seeing it all over the world, what's the likelihood that they're going to see that correction that comes maybe a couple of days or a week after? Probably a low probability.
The damage is done. Let's talk about what we can do as consumers to tell the difference when you see a deep fake and you think it may be a deep fake. I saw one recently that had Joe Biden, the president, they used his voice and they curated an entire narrative of him talking to Kamala Harris in a really derogatory way.
Yeah.
How does someone know what's real and what's fake? How can they check?
It's getting so much harder to be able to spot the abnormalities in a lot of the voice clips and a lot of the images. I mean, the skin, the tone, even the fingers. The fingers was always a giveaway on a lot of these videos or a lot of these images that you would see. They'd be distorted. You'd see unnatural blinking and mannerisms within the video, within the person. But now they're correcting those things. They get better. It gets much harder with each week that passes because the tech continues to evolve and get better. It's widely available. You don't have to be a technology expert or some type of digital forensic expert to be able to create these things and understand how it works. So the real issue is going to be just pause, find other sources that can match, and will show that it's legit.
That's a great point, because I think in that Harris video from Detroit's rally at the airport hangar, a lot of people on AI were saying, look, there's no reflection of the people in the plane, when in fact that actually was a distorted image taking away the reflection on purpose, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there was another flaw in one of the videos that they had as well. The one that they said was legitimate, you could see the crowd that's held back, and then all of a sudden comes flashing into the video. If you look closely at the stairs in the AI video that they were saying was real, the stairs are moving backwards and up as she's coming down. Something like that is a giveaway to know this isn't legit.
We always say people over pundits. We want your questions, and we have Fox 2 viewer Ebony who's on with us right now. And Ebony, you have a question for David.
David, when it comes to this election process, or even just in general, when it comes to AI, we understand that it's very important. It's the leading force in today's society, not just in this generation, but in today's society. How can we be able to differentiate rather it's false or rather it's true, rather this is what we're seeing or rather this is something that has been doctored up?
And I want to ask that specifically because she was asking about, is there like a watermark? Is there a test you can put it through? Is there technology like that that's out there?
There is. And if you look at the executive order that was passed last year by Biden, he wanted federal government issued information that's coming out to have watermarks, for it to be legitimate. You can know that it is legit. But that's not being widely done across the private sector, across all sorts of businesses. So I think it's important to, again, can you find that photo? Can you find other shots of that video being corroborated on other sources, other news outlets? I think that's probably the most important thing that we can all do.
We always tell people, you can come here every night and get the news, whether you like it or not. The truth is going to be here. But there's so many websites that sound like legitimate websites, news sites that aren't, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anybody can create a website and then purport themselves as a news outlet and as a reporter. You have to be sure where you're getting your information from. Is it a legitimate source? How long has that organization been around? What country is the website even registered to? There are so many nuances that can be a giveaway for something that's fake.
And then finally, cyber attacks. We've heard, of course, that both Trump and the Harris camp are saying that they've been the victims of this. We're just getting started with Iran and China and Russia and so many other adversaries that may not want the best thing for America.
Well, that's always going to be an issue, and it's going to become more of an issue as we get closer to this election. These foreign organizations are very well funded, they're very skilled, and there's very little that they can't do should they put their mind to it. So we have to expect these things, and we have to prepare as a nation to be able to face the threats that we're going to experience.
David Darajotis, you're here with us every step of the way, of course, as we navigate these murky waters in some circles when it comes to social media. But I want to thank you for your time coming on The Pulse today.
Thank you, Roop.
And that is The Pulse for tonight. And speaking of social media, reach out to me on email anytime or on social media, roop.raj@fox.com. I check my email every night. Tell me what you think, even if I don't like it. I'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts could end up right here on the air. I'm Roop Raj. We'll see you back here tomorrow night on The Pulse. It was great, Dave. Good job, man.